Welcome to our Anatomy of a Scene, created and narrated by Beth, Irvine and Gourley. In this video today we'll be discussing The Crow, which is a movie directed by Alex Price in 1994. The film, which is based on a graphic novel of the same name by James O'Barr, follows Eric Draven, a young rock band guitarist who is resurrected by a crow to get revenge on the gang that brutally murdered him and his fiancée 1 year prior on the night before Halloween. The Crow has a major cult following that has stuck with it since its release, not only because it's a phenomenal movie, but because it caused the untimely death of main actor Brandon Lee, who was shot and killed when a prop gun malfunctioned and fired a bullet casing straight through his stomach. This caused production to be 3 days short of completion, with missing scenes that would never actually get filmed, and as a result they had to come up with on-the-spot ideas as to how they could finish filming without him. One of the scenes they had to change was the flashback scene. In this scene, Eric has just been brought back to life by the Crow and has returned to his former home where he and his fiancée Shelley were killed. He triggers a series of flashbacks from that night in which he re-experiences all of the pain that he felt as we jump between the flashbacks and the present. The lightning striking outside in the storm coincides with the past and the present as he flies through the apartment window, realizing as his wounds heal before his eyes that he is no longer human. Eric is now sitting in his fiancée's old vanity mirror, rummaging through her belongings left behind from that night. He triggers another set of flashbacks, this time of himself and Shelley together in a more positive setting. When he sees the theatre mask above the mirror, he begins to paint his face in a similar manner, and this is how he gets his signature face. He moves back to the window and stares out at the city below him as the camera pans away. One of the most prominent aspects of the editing of this scene is the way that it was edited due to Brandon's death occurring before they could finish filming the opening 20 minutes of the film. The pre-production crew had a completely different scene planned for the film when we see Eric and Shelley die. However, Lee's death made this impossible to do, and instead the crew on set came up with the idea to film the flashbacks of his death from Eric's own point of view. This way, they didn't have to show his face in any kind of close-up, and if they did have to show it, they would use CGI. This made Brandon Lee the first ever actor to be recreated with CGI in a film. They hired Chad Stahelski, who you may know as the director of the John Wick series, to be his body double, and in multiple scenes they digitally added his face over the top of him. For example, when he's thrown out the window in the flashback, or when he's standing at the window in the end of the scene. The flashback sequences are the most edited parts of the scene. In the first sequence, the different clips are mashed together in a very fast-paced and violent style. Lots of the clips are strong forces, like the gang kicking the door open or even the pumpkin smashing off the step, and lots of quick cuts are used to jump from clip to clip without giving the viewer much time to process anything. The sound to go alongside this sequence is subsequently, to put it simply, loud. The combination of the rolling thunder from the storm and the gang yelling incoherently at the couple adds to the tone that the editor has set, as it is hard to distinguish all of the different sounds. The concept of using such violence and speed in this part of the scene, partnered with a lot of noise, is disorientating and is heavily representative of how both Eric and Shelley would have felt in the moment. This editing in turn disorientates the audience, evoking the same kind of emotion out of them. The second sequence takes a different approach. Where the first flashbacks amped up the speed and intensity, the second slows it way back down. The cuts are a lot more few and far between, and they let us take the time to look at what's happening and fully understand what we're seeing. Not only that, but the movements within the flashbacks are the complete opposite of the first. Rather than inciting anger and rage, they shift more towards inciting love and emotion. The constant noise of the first flashback is switched out for soft snippets of conversation over the top of quiet, minimal instrumental. Much like the first flashback, the editing here has been deliberate, to evoke emotion in viewers. However, this time, we are drawn to feelings of love and compassion mixed with despair as we are thrust between flashbacks that are full of love and life, and the present, which is dull, damp, miserable, and frankly painful for Eric. The second flashback sequence is edited to be completely tonally different to the first, creating a contrast between the two. This helps them to be more easily distinguished from each other and also depicts the overwhelming flood of emotions that Eric is experiencing after being dead for a year. As 3-time Academy Award-winning editor Walter Murch said, the main goal of an edit should be to evoke emotion, and in my opinion, it's very evident that the editor of the film has taken this into great consideration and has definitely done a good job of this. Something else that I thought to be important with regards to the edit of the flashbacks is the colour grading. The unique colour palette of the flashback sequences sets them apart from Eric in the present and adds a fever dream-like quality to them. The flashbacks of the night of the murder are all bright red in colour. This is a very harsh colour and it's very intense and highly saturated. It's a great example of using colour to give emotional context to a scene. The colour red naturally connotes to feelings of anger and rage and is often a sign of danger and aggression, all of which are portrayed during the flashback. When we shift over to the flashbacks with Eric and Shelley together, the colour palette has softened. We go from bright red to soft oranges and deep blues. These colours contrast with the intensity of the red, as orange is typically a colour related to happiness and positivity that radiates warmth and compassion, and blue is seen as a more peaceful colour that brings tranquility. The blue tones, however, can also be linked to the sadness and upset that has been caused by Eric being forced to relive these painful memories. Whenever we look at both of the flashbacks in comparison to the scene taking place in the present, we can really see the major difference, because it's almost as if the flashbacks have been oversaturated with colour, simply because for Eric, these memories, while not all of them are positive, were full of life, whereas looking at the present, there's almost no colour in the scene, because metaphorically speaking, there's nothing left for him to live for.
In the final scenes, we're in a Gothic setting on top of the church that's attached to the graveyard Eric was previously buried in. With the dim lighting being intercut only by sporadic lightning, it is the perfect setting for the final fight between Eric and the man behind his and Shelley's murder, Top Dollar. The lighting does an amazing job of drawing our attention to the two characters, with the contrast of Top Dollar's white sleeves and Eric's pale face against the night sky and dark building. It draws the audience's attention to Top Dollar's arms during the sword fight, as we watch him land a fatal stab through Eric's abdomen. But it also attracts our attention to Eric's emotions throughout the fight, that range from anger to pain and eventually to resignation, as he realises he must let go of his anger and violence, which in the end is his saving grace. The weather in this scene is also very important. It clues the audience in on the characters' emotions, even if we're unable to see their face or read their body language. The rain represents Eric's sadness and pain, as despite the anger he has held on to throughout the film, there is always a deep sadness behind it. After all, he's avenging his dead fiance's brutal rape and murder, all the while feeling the pain she went through and reliving his own experience. The dark of the night reflects the darkness he feels. Black is known to represent death, mourning, and magic, all of which are key elements in Eric's story. He's been brought back to life by magic to avenge the death of Shelley. The lightning, however, clues the audience in on Top Dollar's anger at Eric for killing so many of his subordinates and ruining his Devil's Night plans, as well as for being partially responsible for his lover/sister's death at the hands of the Crow. In fact, when Eric is stabbed, we see the lightning flash so bright that it almost looks as though there is no rain anymore. Top Dollar's anger was so fierce that it almost metaphorically won over Eric's. Fortunately, Eric realises that he can use his and Shelley's pain to get the upper hand and kills Top Dollar when he falls off the roof and is impaled by a gargoyle statue. The gargoyle statues and the sheer size of the drop from the roof were actually established minutes before Top Dollar's death. We've seen an establishing shot of the area that highlighted the surrounding statues. Not only does it foretell his death, but we realise that Sarah, a young girl who was friends with Eric and Shelley when they were alive, is in danger of suffering the same fate as she is hanging onto the roof after being pushed off. Throughout the fight between the two men, the film cuts to Sarah as she slowly loses grip on the wet roof. The editing here is not fast-paced, but combined with the lightning and the faint soundtrack heard, it feels very tense as we realise that her life is at stake. The editing style helps us empathise with Eric because it invokes the same emotions that he's currently feeling and puts us in his shoes as we worry for Sarah's safety. Later on, when Eric tells Top Dollar that he has something for him and puts his hands up to his head, the intermittent cuts of Shelley's dying moments clue the audience in on the fact that Eric is transferring her pain to Top Dollar. The colour grading during these flashbacks lets us know the emotions Eric is feeling at the time. As stated earlier by Lauren, the colour blue can represent tranquility and peace, but also sadness and upset. In this case, both meanings are true. Eric is at peace with Shelley's death and has come to terms that he must let go of her pain, yet at the same time he knows that no matter what he done, all the killing and all the violence will never bring her back, and he feels a deep upset at this. It also parallels the flashbacks that happened earlier when Daryl Albrecht showed Eric Shelley's last moments, that time with a more sombre tone of music and a faster paced edit to show how Eric was bombarded with emotions. This time, however, the edit is slower as he mulls over what happened and slowly comes to terms with it.